Jasmine Miller had once been unstoppable. She had been the fastest runner in the school, her feet barely touching the ground as she sprinted across the track, leaving everyone behind. She had been the one others admired, the one everyone thought could do anything. But that was before the accident. Now her legs barely moved, and the chair she sat in was her only means of mobility, a constant reminder of what had been stolen from her. For months, Blake, Adam, and Ethan had mocked her for it. They made her wheelchair the punchline of their jokes, laughing behind her back, making snide comments every time they passed. The boys who had once been popular seemed to think that mocking Jasmine was a form of entertainment, a way to show their dominance over someone who was already vulnerable. But no one stopped them. The whispers echoed in the halls, cruel words that cut through the air like daggers. "Slow down, Jasmine," Blake would say, just loud enough for her to hear, as if the sound of her wheels moving was somehow a joke. Adam would nudge her chair when no one was looking, just enough to send it swerving off course, a reminder that no one cared enough to intervene. The bullying wasn't just in their word, it was in the silence of everyone else around them. Her classmates, the ones who had once called her a friend, now avoided her gaze. They pretended not to see, as if their silence could erase the hurt they saw her carrying every day. Jasmine had been part of the crowd before the accident, laughing, talking, blending in like everyone else. But now she was a ghost in the hallway, ignored by most, pitied by others, and haunted by the whispers that followed her every move. Blake, Adam, and Ethan knew they had her trapped. They saw how the other kids turned away, how the teachers seemed to look the other way. Jasmine was easy prey. She didn't say anything. She didn't fight back. She just kept moving, her wheels spinning, day after day, as the world around her spun on without noticing her. But there was one person who did notice, one person who always had her back. Maya, Jasmine's older sister. Maya had been a star athlete too, not on the track, but in martial arts, where her strength and discipline had earned her respect. She wasn't the type to stand by and watch injustice unfold. She had always been Jasmine's protector, the one who pushed her to be better, the one who cheered the loudest from the sidelines. Maya wasn't in Jasmine's class anymore. She was a grade above, but that didn't stop her from making sure Jasmine wasn't alone. Maya would walk her to class when she could, check in during lunch, and keep a watchful eye over her when they weren't together. She didn't say much, but Jasmine could feel it, the comfort of knowing her sister was always there, silently watching over her. But Maya knew the moment was coming. She had seen how Jasmine shrank in front of the world, how she became smaller with each passing day. She noticed how her sister's confidence had started to erode, how the once bold girl who could outrun anyone on the track now barely spoke. Maya could feel it too, the anger that simmered just beneath the surface. She had always been the calm one, the one who stayed in control. But the cruelty Jasmine faced was too much, and Maya couldn't stand by much longer. Jasmine hadn't told her about the things the boys had said. She hadn't needed to. Maya could hear it in her sister's silence, in the way she looked at her wheelchair as though it were something to be ashamed of. But Maya had seen enough. The time for waiting was over. The tipping point came during the school assembly. It was Patriot Day, the one event every year where students were expected to show pride for their country. The gymnasium was filled with students standing at attention, hands over their hearts as the national anthem played. Jasmine sat in her wheelchair, locked in place, her head bowed. She wanted to disappear into the floor. She couldn't stand, not because she didn't care, but because her body wouldn't let her. And at that moment, she couldn't have known that Blake and his friends would target her. "Oh, no respect for the flag," Blake sneered from across the room, loud enough for everyone to hear. The gym seemed to hold its breath for a moment before his words cut through the silence. "Come on, Jasmine, you could at least try to stand up." The laughter that followed was like a slap in the face, each chuckle a reminder of how small she had become. Jasmine's face burned with humiliation. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block it out, but the sting of their words wouldn't go away. She bit her lip, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but she couldn't. Her body was too weak, and her voice felt trapped inside her throat. That was when Maya saw it. She saw her sister's shoulders slump, her head dipped lower as the world seemed to close in around her. She had heard the whispers, seen the cruel smirks. But this was different. This was something she couldn't ignore any longer. Maya's blood boiled. She stood up, her fists clenching at her sides, her eyes locked on Blake, Adam, and Ethan. They had gone too far, and she wasn't going to let them get away with it. Maya's steps were purposeful, steady, and unhurried, but in that moment, they seemed to echo through the gym louder than the national anthem. Jasmine didn't see her at first. Her face was still buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking slightly as she tried to hold back the tears. But Maya saw everything. She saw the sneers on Blake's face, the cruel gleam in Adam's eyes, the way Ethan just stood by, filming the moment as if it were a scene from a movie. The laughter hadn't stopped, and Jasmine's humiliation was palpable, hanging in the air like thick smoke. Maya didn't flinch, didn't look away. She took one more steady step, her eyes locked onto Blake as he leaned against a row of chairs, still laughing. Without warning, Maya crossed the gym floor in a few long strides, her presence commanding the attention of everyone nearby. The laughter faltered as the room took notice. She wasn't a teacher, not a principal. She was Jasmine's sister, and that made her something far more dangerous. Blake's smirk faded as Maya came to a stop in front of him. For a brief moment, he looked confused, as though he hadn't expected her to confront him. The entire gym seemed to go still, waiting. Maya's voice was calm, her words measured, but there was an edge to them that sent a chill down Blake's spine. "You think it's funny?" Maya asked, her voice low but steady. Blake shifted, not sure what to say. He laughed nervously, trying to maintain his bravado, but Maya didn't let him off the hook. "You think making her cry is a joke? You think humiliating her in front of everyone is something to laugh about?" Jasmine had heard Maya's voice. She had always known when Maya was serious, when the air around her crackled with that quiet intensity. But she didn't want her sister to do anything reckless. She didn't want Maya to get in trouble. She didn't want anyone to get in trouble on her behalf. So Jasmine tried to shrink into herself, hoping her sister would back down. But Maya didn't. She didn't take her eyes off Blake, who had started to squirm under her gaze. "Just go back to your seat, Maya," Blake muttered, shifting uncomfortably. "It's not a big deal." "It's a big deal to me," Maya replied, her tone not rising, but carrying so much weight that Blake couldn't respond. Maya wasn't just angry, she was hurt, and her sister's pain had become her own. She wasn't about to let this go. Blake's eyes darted around the gym, as if looking for someone, anyone to intervene. But no one did. No teacher stepped forward, no administrator rushed to stop what was happening. It was just Maya, standing tall and unyielding in the face of their mockery. Maya wasn't the type to start a fight. She had always preferred to use her words to talk her way out of problems. But Blake, Adam, and Ethan had pushed her to the edge, and she had finally reached her limit. Without another word, Maya grabbed Blake by the collar of his jacket, pulling him forward. Her strength surprised him, and before he could react, she shoved him back against the lockers. The crash of metal against metal echoed through the gym, drawing gasps from the students nearby. Blake staggered but didn't fall. He opened his mouth to say something, but Maya was already moving. Before he could collect himself, Maya drove her knee into his stomach. Blake gasped for air, his hands clutching his chest as he doubled over. But Maya wasn't done. With one swift motion, she dropped him to the ground, her calm expression never faltering. "Don't ever touch my sister again," Maya said, her voice dangerously calm. The gym was silent, save for the sound of Blake wheezing on the floor. Ethan and Adam were still frozen, unsure of what to do next. Maya turned toward them, her gaze cutting through the air like a blade. "You want to join him?" she asked, her voice sharp. "You're next if you even think about making her feel worthless again." For a long moment, neither Ethan nor Adam moved. Maya didn't need to threaten them again. The fear in their eyes said everything. But then, without warning, Ethan lunged toward Maya. His hand swung out, trying to grab her by the arm, but Maya's instincts were faster. In one swift motion, she caught his wrist mid-air and twisted it behind his back, forcing him to his knees with a painful yelp. "You want to touch my sister? You'll regret it," Maya hissed, her grip tightening. Ethan whimpered, struggling against her hold, but Maya was unyielding. She had always been the calm one, the one who avoided confrontation. But this was different. This was her sister, and no one got to hurt her. No one got to make her feel small. Adam, realizing the situation had escalated far beyond what he'd expected, took a step back. But Maya wasn't finished. She quickly shoved Ethan away from her, sending him sprawling onto the floor. The gym was now completely still, students watching the scene unfold with a mix of shock and disbelief. Maya stood tall, her eyes scanning the room, daring anyone else to make a move. By the time the teachers finally arrived, Maya had already walked away, her shoulders back, her steps steady. She didn't need to explain herself. The message had been sent. Jasmine wasn't alone. Not anymore. The confrontation in the gym left a heavy silence in its wake. The students who had been watching didn't speak, not right away. They had witnessed something they hadn't expected, a calm, controlled fury that shattered the casual cruelty of the bullies. The sound of lockers clanging and shoes shuffling on the floor was the only thing that broke the stillness, but the damage was done. Blake, Adam, and Ethan were left lying in various positions on the floor. They had been caught off guard, their bravado crumbling in the face of Maya's strength, and no one, not even the teachers who arrived moments later, knew exactly how to handle it. The gym was cleared out quickly after the fight. Blake, still winded and nursing his bruised ribs, was helped up by one of the gym teachers. His face was flushed, a mix of anger and embarrassment. Maya, however, had already disappeared from the scene. She didn't wait for a lecture, didn't stick around for a confrontation with the teachers. She had made her point, and she wasn't looking for applause or recognition. But as the students filed out of the gym, many of them were whispering. It wasn't about what happened during the assembly anymore. It wasn't about the national anthem or who stood and who didn't. It was about Maya Taylor, the girl who had defended her sister with no hesitation, the girl who had taken on 3 bullies without breaking a sweat. Her reputation spread faster than the story of what had happened. People talked, and the whispers weren't just among the students. Teachers and staff started murmuring too. Maya wasn't someone to be underestimated. When the bell rang, Jasmine wheeled herself to the cafeteria, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on her. She could hear the hushed voices behind her, the way they shifted when she passed. She knew what they were saying. They had all seen her break down earlier, seen her in her weakest moment. The pity was suffocating, even more so than the taunts. She tried to ignore it, to focus on getting to her seat, but it was impossible to forget that Maya's actions, however protective, had now painted a target on both of their backs. Jasmine's phone buzzed on her lap. It was a text from Maya. "Are you okay?" Jasmine hesitated for a moment before replying. "I'm fine, but why did you do that? You didn't need to fight them." The reply came almost immediately. "Yes, I did. They hurt you, Jasmine, and no one was doing anything about it." Jasmine looked up from her phone, her heart sinking. Maya was right. No one had stepped in to stop the bullying. Teachers, students, even friends had looked the other way. In that moment, Jasmine realized something. Maya wasn't just her protector. She was the one who would force the world to see her, to stand up for what was right, even when no one else would. But there was something in Jasmine's heart that held her back from fully embracing the comfort Maya's words offered. A part of her felt like she didn't deserve Maya to fight for her, to go to such extremes to protect her. She was the one who had been hurt, the one whose life had changed. Maya's actions, though noble, made Jasmine feel small. The rest of the day passed slowly. Jasmine could feel the tension in the air. The other students kept their distance, some giving her sympathetic glances, others muttering to their friends as she passed by. She had always been part of the group, but now she was the girl everyone whispered about. And no matter how much she tried to ignore it, the weight of their gazes was heavy. But it wasn't just the students who noticed. By the time Jasmine got home, her mother, Karen, was sitting in the living room, waiting for her. She didn't say anything at first, just gave Jasmine a long, steady look as she wheeled herself inside. "Jasmine," her mother said softly, "I heard what happened today." Jasmine felt her stomach twist. She had been trying to avoid talking about it, trying to bury it under the routine of schoolwork and family. But now it was out in the open. She couldn't escape it. "Mom, I'm fine," Jasmine replied quickly, not wanting to drag anyone else into the mess. But Karen wasn't buying it. She stood up and walked over to her, kneeling down in front of her daughter, a serious look on her face. Jasmine, you know I've always taught you to stand up for yourself, to be strong, to be proud of who you are, no matter what others think. But I also know that there are times when you can't do it alone. And today your sister did what I couldn't. She defended you when no one else did. And you know what? I'm proud of her. I'm proud of both of you. Jasmine bit her lip. She hadn't expected her mother to react this way. She had assumed Karen would be upset, maybe even angry that Maya had gone that far. But Karen's words weren't full of blame. They were full of understanding. I know you're hurting, Karen continued, her voice softer now. I know that things have changed in ways we never imagined. But you have people who love you, people who will never stop fighting for you. And that includes your sister. Jasmine looked down at her hands, her fingers tightly gripping the rims of her chair. But Maya didn't have to do that, Mom. She could have just let it go. I don't want her to get in trouble for me. I don't want her to lose everything. Her mother smiled gently and reached out to touch Jasmine's hand. Maya did what she had to. And you know what? She didn't lose everything. She found something more important than popularity or fitting in. She found her voice, and you'll find yours too. You just need to let it out. Jasmine was quiet for a moment. Her mother's words sunk in deeper than she expected. For so long, she had let the silence drown her. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to start speaking up, to stop hiding in the shadows of the whispers and the pity. Maybe it was time to take her place in the world again, not as the girl in the wheelchair, but as Jasmine Miller, the person she had always been. That night, she lay in bed, staring out the window as the moonlight filtered through the curtains. She thought about what her mother had said, and for the first time in a long while, she felt something spark deep inside her. It wasn't anger, it wasn't fear, it was determination. She was tired of being the victim. She was tired of feeling invisible. She was ready to fight in her own way, and she wasn't going to do it alone. The following days were a blur of whispered conversations, sideways glances, and a crushing sense of being watched at every corner. Jasmine tried to carry on, to keep her head down and go through the motions of school, but it felt impossible. Every time she passed through the hallways, she could feel the weight of every eye on her, some out of sympathy, others with judgment. Some students were kind, giving her quiet smiles and soft words, but it wasn't enough to erase the sting of the bullying, the pity, the silence, the uncomfortable looks. All of it still lingered like a shadow. Maya, however, was a constant presence. She stood by Jasmine at lunch, even though their peers had started to distance themselves. She'd sit with her, making sure no one could get too close without feeling Maya's protective glare. She didn't care about the stares. She wasn't going to let Jasmine feel alone in this. But as much as Jasmine appreciated her sister's support, she couldn't help but feel like she was being swallowed whole by the situation. She couldn't hide behind Maya forever. It wasn't fair to Maya, and it wasn't fair to herself. The tension in the school was thick. People were starting to talk about what had happened in the gym, how Maya had stood up to Blake, Adam, and Ethan, and how they had been left humiliated in front of the whole school. The story had spread, and now Jasmine felt like the aftermath was worse than the bullying itself. She had never wanted anyone to get hurt on her behalf, but now Maya was the one who had taken the consequences. She had been suspended for her actions, and while Jasmine knew her sister had acted out of love, she also knew it wasn't the way things were supposed to work. One afternoon after school, Jasmine wheeled herself into the library. She was trying to find a moment of peace, a place where she could escape from the weight of everything that was happening. But as soon as she entered, she spotted someone in the back corner of the room, a face she had never expected to see. It was Ms. Lawson, one of the teachers who had been at the assembly that day. She was sitting by herself, her eyes focused on the screen of her laptop, typing away. Jasmine hesitated for a moment, unsure whether she should approach her or leave. But something inside her told her that this moment was important. She had to start speaking up. She couldn't let everything stay buried any longer. "Ms. Lawson?" Jasmine called softly. The teacher looked up, surprised. "Jasmine, I didn't expect to see you here. How are you doing?" Jasmine hesitated for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "I'm okay, but I wanted to talk to you about what happened, about Maya." Ms. Lawson raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." Jasmine took a deep breath, her hands gripping the sides of her chair as she tried to find the words. I know Maya did what she thought was right. I know she was protecting me, but I don't want her to suffer because of me. I don't want her to be punished for standing up for me." Ms. Lawson's expression softened. She closed her laptop and leaned forward, folding her hands together. "Jasmine, Maya took a big risk. She stepped in when no one else would. But I want you to know something. What she did wasn't just about defending you. It was about standing up to the cruelty that was happening to you. And that is never something to apologize for. But I understand why you feel like this is all your fault. I've been watching how it's been affecting you, and I know it's hard." Jasmine lowered her head, feeling the weight of her emotions rising in her chest. "I don't want Maya to lose everything because of me. I don't want her to be known as the girl who fought. I want people to remember me for who I am, not because of the wheelchair. I'm tired of being the girl everyone feels sorry for." Ms. Lawson nodded slowly. "I understand, but Jasmine, the thing is, no one should ever make you feel sorry for who you are. What happened with Blake, Adam, and Ethan? It wasn't just about the bullying. It was about a system that failed you. It's not just them. It's the teachers, the administration, and the people who stood by and did nothing. They failed you. And Maya, well, she did what she had to, because someone had to do something." Jasmine swallowed hard. "But why did no one speak up before? Why did it take Maya to make things stop?" Ms. Lawson leaned back in her chair, her expression serious. "Jasmine, sometimes people don't speak up because they're afraid. They're afraid of the consequences, afraid of what will happen if they stand up. But that doesn't make it right. Maya didn't just fight because she loves you. She fought because she saw the injustice that was happening. And you don't need to be afraid anymore. Not of what others think, not of who you are. You've got a voice now, and it's time to use it." Jasmine sat quietly, letting Ms. Lawson's words sink in. The teacher was right. For too long, she had let herself be defined by what others thought of her, by the whispers, the glances, and the pity. She had hidden behind her silence, hoping it would all go away. But it wouldn't. It wasn't going to go away until she decided to make it stop. And Maya had already shown her how to fight. Not with violence or anger, but with strength. Strength to face the truth, strength to stand up, even when no one else would. That night, Jasmine sat in front of her laptop, the cursor blinking on the screen in front of her. She had been thinking about the lawsuit, about the changes that needed to happen. Her sister had done what she had to do. Now it was her turn to do the same. Jasmine wasn't sure if she was ready to face the world just yet, but she knew one thing: she wouldn't be hiding anymore. Not from the bullies, not from her past, and not from herself. She typed a message to Maya. "We're going to make them listen, Maya. We're going to make sure this never happens again. Together." She hit send and leaned back in her chair. It wasn't just about taking a stand anymore. It was about fighting for herself and for everyone else who had been silenced. The following week, the atmosphere at school was tense, almost suffocating. The halls, once filled with idle chatter, now seemed quieter. The whispers about Maya's actions still hung in the air, and the students who had once been silent now had to reckon with what had happened. Jasmine knew the next few weeks weren't going to be easy, but she also knew she had taken the first step. It wasn't just about Maya anymore. It was about her too, the silent girl in the wheelchair who had been too afraid to speak up, too afraid to fight back. But now things were changing, and it wasn't just because of the fight, it was because of the lawsuit. Jasmine and Maya had met with a lawyer a few days after their conversation with Ms. Lawson. They had discussed the legal action they were about to take against the school district, citing failure to protect Jasmine from ongoing bullying and harassment. They knew it wasn't going to be an easy battle. The district would fight back as they always did, protecting their own reputation above the well-being of students. But Jasmine wasn't going to let that stop her. She wanted something to change, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been hurt and had no voice. The district hadn't protected her when they should have. Now it was time for her to make them listen. It was time for everyone who had ignored the problem to see how much damage they had caused. The day the lawsuit was filed, Jasmine sat with Maya in the kitchen, staring at the stack of papers in front of them. They had signed their names, but this wasn't just about a piece of paper. It was about the future. "I never thought it would come to this," Jasmine whispered, her eyes lingering on her name printed at the top of the documents. Maya reached over and squeezed her sister's hand. It didn't have to come to this, Jazz, but you had to speak up. You had to let people know the truth. Jasmine nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her words. We have to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. We can't just let them get away with it. We can't let them pretend nothing happened. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of meetings, phone calls, and press interviews. Word about the lawsuit spread quickly, and soon the local news picked up the story. What started as a small ripple in the community grew into a wave. Jasmine was no longer just the girl in the wheelchair. She was the girl who fought back, and people were listening. The story gained momentum, spreading to local organizations and disability rights groups who offered their support. Jasmine had become a symbol of strength for so many, even though she never asked to be. The weight of the world seemed to settle on her shoulders, but for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like too much to bear. As the weeks went on, things at school began to change. Blake, Adam, and Ethan were no longer at school. They were withdrawn by their parents, their futures uncertain. Rumors swirled about what had happened, but no one was talking about it openly. The school district released a statement that sounded more like damage control than an apology, and for the first time in a long while, Jasmine felt like they were starting to acknowledge the wrongs they had ignored for so long. The final turning point came when the school district was forced to open an internal review of its handling of harassment and bullying. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The administration began implementing new policies for students with disabilities, ensuring that every student had a safe and supportive environment to learn in. Jasmine's case had forced them to confront their shortcomings. But the victory wasn't just in the legal action, it was in the way the world around her started to change. It was in the small, subtle moments. The students who had once avoided her now came up to her, asking how they could help. Teachers who had ignored the problem began to take a stand. The administration started offering training on disability awareness, ensuring that incidents like hers would not be swept under the rug again. Jasmine was invited to speak at a local event for disability rights, sharing her story and advocating for a world where everyone could feel seen and valued. She wasn't just telling her story anymore. She was making sure that the world listened, that the truth wasn't silenced, that it couldn't be ignored anymore. One afternoon, Maya sat with Jasmine on the porch, watching the sun dip low on the horizon. The house had quieted, the noise of the outside world distant for a moment. "You did it," Maya said, her voice full of pride. Jasmine smiled, but it wasn't the same small, forced smile from before. It was genuine. "We did it," she corrected her sister. "We both did." Maya chuckled softly, reaching over to ruffle her sister's hair. "You're right, but you're the one who found your voice. I'm proud of you." Jasmine looked up at her sister, her eyes full of a new kind of determination. "I'm proud of you too, Maya. You didn't give up on me, and now I won't give up on anyone else." The battle wasn't over. There were still challenges ahead. There would always be people who tried to push back, to silence the voices that demanded change. But Jasmine had learned something that no one could take away from her, that her voice was powerful, that her strength came not just from the battles she won, but from the ones she had the courage to face. And as long as she had her sister by her side, she knew that nothing could stop them. Together, they had changed the story. Together, they had started a new chapter.